Goethe said, the threshold is the place of expectation.
That's a good line.
And that's exactly where we're going today, isn't it? Right onto that razor's edge between not quite there.
And just enough.
Yeah.
That exact moment of transformation.
Yeah, where something just fundamentally shifts.
It's a really powerful idea, and you see it pop up, like, everywhere. Unexpected places.
It really does. You know that feeling, maybe you're working late, tons of coffee,
Oh, yeah.
and then suddenly you cross this invisible line where more coffee just stops.
And it actually starts making things worse. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like you've hit your own personal threshold. So these aren't just, metaphors about doorways.
No, they're critical turning points. Hinges, almost.
Hinges, good one. And in this deep dive, we're going to dig into some really fascinating examples of these thresholds and, well, why they matter so much.
Right. Let's explore that turning point idea a bit more. It's not just passing through it.
No.
It's what happens at that specific point. Take biology, for example. A neuron. It just sits there, relatively quiet, until the electrical charge inside hits a very, very specific level.
Yeah.
It's around minus 55 millivolts.
Okay, minus 55 millivolts.
Then, bang, it fires off a signal. And what's really interesting, there was a study just this year, June 2024,
right,
that confirmed just how incredibly consistent that threshold is in human neurons.
Wow, so it's reliable.
Extremely. It suggests this fundamental, dependable switch built right into our nervous system.
That's amazing. And it's not just tiny things in our brains, is it?
Not at all.
Even something like, I don't know, melting chocolate.
Chocolate. Yes, perfect example. There's a critical point there, too. If you heat it too fast, past about, 31 degrees Celsius,
yeah,
it can seize up, gets all grainy, unusable. It's that precise moment of change.
And our lives are just full of these moments, aren't they?
Absolutely.
That instant you finally decide, okay, hit send on that really vulnerable email.
Or taking that breath before asking a massive question like a proposal.
Yeah. Or making that leap into a totally different career. These are all thresholds.
It's almost like there's this universal potential energy building up.
Like a loading bar.
Exactly, like the universe's own loading bar, just before something big happens. And right there at that threshold, there's this choice.
Even if we don't always realize it.
Right. To let the transition happen or, pull back, maybe restart.
So let's dig into that biological almost bit. The neuron again. That axon hillock you mentioned.
The gatekeeper.
It really acts like a bouncer, doesn't it, for nerve signals? If it's below that minus 55...
The signal just doesn't get past. Not strong enough.
But once it hits that number...
all systems go. Full send.
It's incredible how that specific point stops our brains from just being like constant static.
Exactly. It creates order out of potential chaos. That precision is vital for clear communication in the nervous system.
And this idea of an optimal zone, a sweet spot. It's not just neurons.
No, definitely not. Think about the Yerkes-Dodson curve. It goes way back, 1908.
Right, I've heard of that. Stress and performance.
Precisely. It shows this really interesting relationship between how stressed or aroused we are and how well we perform. A little bit of stress.
Good for focus. Sharpens you up.
Exactly. But go past that optimal point.
And performance drops off. Overwhelm kicks in.
Right. That Goldilocks stress idea that, more recent research keeps confirming.
Yeah, saw some overviews from 2023 mentioning it.
You need just the right amount. Not too little, or you're inactive. Not too much, or you burn out.
Like tuning a guitar string, maybe? Too loose, no sound. Too tight.
Snap. Perfect analogy.
And these critical points, they exist on a huge scale too, right? Not just personal.
Oh, absolutely. Planetary scale. Take the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming target.
The Paris threshold.
That's another huge boundary. And what's really worrying, a 2024 paper in Nature.
What did it say?
It warned that even going slightly over that 1.5 degrees could trigger a whole cascade of climate tipping points, meaning exponentially increasing risks. So these aren't just numbers on a page. They have massive real-world consequences.
Wow. Okay. That definitely broadens the perspective. Right. And bringing it back to us, to individuals, this threshold idea is also key for burnout.
Hugely important there. There was another 2024 study looked at over 60 tech companies in China.
Yeah.
Found a really clear point. If an employee's workload went over a certain threshold, especially relative to how well they felt they fit in the company.
Let me guess, burnout went up.
Spiked dramatically. So it's not just about how much work you do.
It's that interaction, workload and feeling like you belong, like you fit.
Exactly. That study really highlights that thresholds aren't always about reaching something good. You can tip over into the negative too.
So recognizing those limits, workload, emotional strain, that work-life thing is
It's
crucial.
absolutely essential for well-being.
No, it's also pretty inspiring to look at people in history who, well, they really pushed boundaries, didn't they? Crossed some major threshold.
For sure. Who comes to mind?
Well, Marie Curie, her early work with radiation, her approach to safety might seem different by today's standards.
Definitely operating on the edge.
But it was instrumental in those breakthroughs, right? Radiotherapy advancements.
Yeah.
She was right at the edge of what was known, what was safe, and the results were immense.
Absolutely. Navigating totally uncharted territory. Risks involved, yes, but the impact, undeniable.
Or Rosa Parks.
Mhm.
That simple act, refusing to give up her seat. It wasn't just personal.
No, it crossed a huge societal threshold, became this incredibly powerful catalyst for the civil rights movement.
And then you've got someone like Thomas Edison. All those failures.
Thousands, reportedly, for the light bulb.
He basically redefined the threshold for perseverance, didn't he?
He really did.
Yeah.
And the Wright brothers. Just imagine thinking you could actually fly.
Seems impossible looking back.
Their first flight wasn't just an invention. It smashed through a barrier people thought was unbreakable.
There's that T.S. Eliot quote, isn't there? Something about risking going too far.
Yes. Only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go.
That fits perfectly.
It really does. These stories show how thresholds can be like guardrails, stopping us from harm.
But also
launch pads for incredible progress if we approach them thoughtfully with courage.
Okay, so that's the big picture, the history. How do we actually bring this down to earth? How do we find our own edges, our personal thresholds?
Right, the practical side. Well, the deep dive offers some good pointers. One key thing is mapping your signals,
What does that mean?
becoming much more aware of your own internal cues, physical stuff, like your heart racing, or maybe your humor getting really dark under pressure.
Huh, yeah, I recognize that one.
And emotional cues, too, like suddenly needing to binge watch an entire season of something at 3 a.m.
Uh-oh, guilty.
That could be a sign you've blown past a comfortable limit.
So self-awareness first,
Yeah.
tuning in.
Fundamental.
Yeah.
Recognizing those early warnings. Then there's the idea of tiny experiments. Instead of huge leaps, make small changes. Try pushing yourself, just say 10% harder on one thing. Or tweak that cooking temperature slightly. See what happens.
So testing the waters gently, exploring the edges.
Exactly. Controlled exploration rather than just jumping in blind.
Makes sense. And this rhythm, not perfection idea, that ties back to Yerkes Dodson, right?
It does. Finding a sustainable level, not aiming for peak performance all the time, because that's just
Not gonna last. Leads straight to burnout.
right. It's about finding that sustainable rhythm and also incorporating reset rituals.
Like what? Meditation?
Could be, or simpler things. Just taking a few deep breaths, a short walk outside. Even just pausing to really look at the trees or the sky.
Deliberate pauses. Ways to step back from that edge when you feel yourself getting close.
Precisely. To regain perspective before you tip over.
I like the analogy used here, thinking of thresholds like doorbells.
Oh yeah, how so?
Well, you apply gentle pressure, wait for a response.
Instead of just hammering on the door relentlessly.
Exactly. Being mindful, responsive to the boundary.
That's a great way to put it. And ultimately, I think what this whole deep dive boils down to is the critical importance of understanding enough.
Enough. That's the word.
Whether it's that neuron needing just enough charge, or the chocolate needing the right temperature, or our planet having its limit.
For us knowing our personal limits.
Exactly. Knowing our own definition of enough in different parts of our lives, that's maybe the core of self-awareness, of well-being.
Because crossing limits. It can lead to amazing breakthroughs, real growth.
But it can also lead straight to burnout, to negative outcomes.
The wisdom is learning to tell the difference, isn't it? Which threshold is which?
That's the challenge. And while those big, life-changing leaps get a lot of attention,
We shouldn't forget the small steps.
the power of consistent, incremental progress, those little adjustments that add up over time.
It makes me think of that Mary Oliver question.
Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Powerful stuff.
It really is. And maybe part of the answer is just becoming more aware of these thresholds in our own lives.
Recognizing them. Knowing which ones are worth the risk, worth leaping over.
And, just as importantly, which ones are there for support, the ones worth leaning on.
Yeah. Structure and support.
So maybe as you, our listener, go about your day today, just take a moment, think about the thresholds you encounter. Big ones, small ones.
Noticing them, respecting them, understanding when and how to engage with them.
That's where some really insightful things can start to happen, I think.